he should get out of the dealer business and get into, something else. Maybe he's sort of like it. And it sounds to me like he's an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah. I mean, I will say he took my advice very well. And
That's good.
yeah. I mean, but then he was the same guy who was like, yeah, just sign it to everybody and let the best man win. So I say we still have a bridge to gap as far as repossession education goes for these dealers. And I have friends who own, small dealerships locally that we've had to kind of educate. One guy in particular that he's a buddy of ours. And when he opened his dealership, he initially was like, oh, I'm not going to use you guys. I'm just going to do my own repos. It's like way too expensive. And we were like, okay, dude, like it's not fun. And like eventually he calls back and he's like, okay, so yeah, maybe it is kind of worth it.
We're going to have to rehash this whole part about the doubling up side. I won't dive into too many words and give it away ahead of time, but we'll come back to that one. And you have to repeat that one, Bryanna. That's a really good one to tell.
Poor Austin. He's going to be like, thanks for diming me out. I'm going to give me 2 seconds, guys. I'm just going to blow my nose really quick.
Sure.
You're fine.
Yeah. Big thanks for showing up, even though you're sick today. This is definitely somebody in the car business.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I have a doctor's appointment after this, so hopefully they'll hook me up with some antibiotics and I'll feel better by Monday.
I just finished my bottle of them.
You ever use Neti Pot?
I actually thought about that. I actually said that to myself in the shower this morning. I was like, I should go get one of those.
Dude, those things are amazing. They really are.
I tried Zycam.
When my wife was pregnant, she would have congestion issues. And of course, they didn't want to subscribe or anything. And her doctor said, do you ever try the Neti Pot? And from there on, like the whole family does it. And I mean, I've never really had much allergy issues since then. Neither has she. Even the kids do it.
You turned me on to it, Jeff. I use it.
I did turn you on to it.
Yeah. Works well.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's from traveling. There was a couple days in Portugal I didn't feel so hot. So
3 seconds to live, folks.
Okay.
It always sneaks up on you. Surprise.
Yeah. I want to say it's growing on me, but it's not.
It's the wake up bell.
Yep. For sure.
So Bryanna, thank you for joining us today on Friday the 13th.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Well, and you're also here sick, which is like kudos to you.
I wasn't. There was no excuses for missing any work. It's my first week back from vacation. So
where'd you go?
We went to Portugal. It was incredible. I did not want to come home.
I bet not. That's awesome.
Very cool place.
They got the biggest waves in the world in Portugal now. It's kind of funny. They just recently discovered it's like every 10 years or so, if you're a surfer, they find the next biggest wave in the world. Obviously it's always been there, but.
Did you see that on video, Alex? I keep forgetting that you surfed, man, because I follow a couple different surfers on Instagram, and there was, I think it was just last week, this dude caught on record the largest wave ever. It was like a 5-minute wave. Just watching the whole video, it was just unbelievable. And then last year about the same time, so it must be, I don't know if it's the same
this time. It's this time of year.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it was just crazy. And of course, I had to follow my all-time favorite surfer, Kelly Slater. I follow him on IG. He's pretty based.
Yep, the Michael Jordan of surfing, right there.
Yep.
Well, Bryanna, again, we're glad you're here. We think this is a really fun and educational topic for our audience, and thank you NIADA for bringing us together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be included. There's definitely some bridges to gap in our two sectors of the auto industry.
Where every time you speak, because we spoke one or two times before, I walk away learning something that I had no idea. Even, and we all know exists, repos and all that good stuff, especially being in the car business. But I just didn't realize what all went into it. Just all the nuances, all the variables involved. It's crazy. It's crazy. Every time I learn something new.
Well, that's great. And it's a lot different than it was, even 10, 20 years ago, with the technology we use now and the regulations that we're under,
the cameras pointed at you.
Yep. The state and federal laws and consumers are more educated than they've ever been before, right? Because everybody has a device in their hand that has access to all the information in the world. So, it's not that hard to Google, like, how do I prevent myself from getting repoed, or what, like, how do I hide my car, or, how do I stop a repo? So, consumers are definitely more educated, which is, a blessing and a curse sometimes.
Well, how did you get into the business?
It's my husband's fault. I tell him all the time it's his fault. No, he built the ship, I always say, and I'm just kind of sailing it. He does work with me every day. He just kind of lets me go be the face and the mouth, and he is perfectly happy doing so. He's really great. We're great partners. So we're a great team. He deals more with like clients in the field and things like that. And I deal more with like the office and the numbers and, and obviously the media stuff and the education stuff, which I'm really, really passionate about. I was actually appointed president of our state association, the Texas ARP. So my tenure began on January 1, and I'm super excited to be doing that and collaborating with the other state and national associations and, other associations like NIADA that just to spread, awareness, education, and network. Because I've even appeared on some like transport podcasts and shows just to kind of bridge that gap as well. Because I think repo has definitely always been like the black sheep of the auto finance world. And we're so different now than we used to be. We really are professionals. We're doing things by the book. We're doing it correctly. And we want to make sure everybody understands that. And also that people understand that there is an art to this, right? We aren't just out here playing repo. This is our livelihood, and we are professionals, and we're doing it correctly, and we want people to understand why it's important to do it correctly, especially like these dealers, right? Because what I spoke about at NIADA was the reason you need to hire a professional repossessor, an accredited repossessor, is because it protects your business too. So, wrongful repo, breach of peace, FDCPA lawsuits, we see them all the time, right? Wells Fargo, credit acceptance. So they get very, very expensive.
And the other side to it, the one word you're not using, I'm going to tell a little story to get there. So I started selling cars in the 90s, and back then you used to spot deals because things like Dealer Track didn't exist. So you'd pull someone's credit, you take a look at it and say, I can get that loan approved or something. And we had two customers that they were shady credit. And and it was also the 90s, so the interest rates were like, a stellar interest rate was 9%. We're back in those days again. But anyway, we signed them on paper and like maybe 7 contracts, I don't know. But and said, one of these will get hung. And we let them take the car and go, and didn't get any of them approved. And so I was the new sales guy, and there was the next new sales guy, and we were tasked with going out and getting those cars back. And there were some shady parts of town, and in order to track these people down, like, we had to talk to people and knock on doors, and we had some responses and things that were, 2 little 19-year-old white boys It was scary. I'd never, ever want to deal with that ever again, nor would I want to put someone through it unless that was their profession. So,
yeah, I mean, the biggest advice I could give dealers, like I think I've told you guys this before, as a consumer facing business, it boggles me that anyone would want to be their own collector, that they would want to deal with those possible reputational issues or, you know, the things that we deal with on a daily basis. I mean, I just don't think that lenders are built for that. So I would advise against it. Absolutely.
yeah. So, you know, what would you say a day in the life is like in the recovery world? And is it better to call it recovery or repo?
I'm freezing up here, guys. Is that on your end or my end? My Wi-Fi seems okay.
Yeah, we are seeing you a little.
It's fine. Your audio is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as the audio is good.
You'll catch up.
A day in the life is really unpredictable. I prefer a boring day where everything goes to plan and no crazy, you know, issues arise. I prefer a day where my guys are dragging in metal and my employees are safe and my clients are happy and I'm not being sued. And, but every day is different just because it's the nature of what we do. My husband just commented lots of Advil and Tylenol, and that's probably true too. Yeah, I mean, going through the motions every day. Obviously, like I'm in the office every single day. Sometimes I do go out in the field with my team because I obviously like to see what their pain points are or where we might be missing the mark or, you know, and I like my team to know that I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. My husband's obviously out in the field a lot more than I am these days, but you know, it's typical office job most of the time, right? Like I am dealing with emails and phone calls and compliance and you know, memorandums and just all those kinds of things and spreadsheets and numbers and audits and analyzing and whatever. But you know, on the bad days, you know, well, I'll give you an example. It's never fun to wake up to a phone call that one of your camera car drivers or one of your agents have been shot at. So there was an evening that not even the RO, and this was actually put out in CU Collector, because we do like to make people aware that our industry isn't fun. This isn't a game. It's not entertainment. It's not a TV show. And we obviously want to avoid conflict and violence and things like that. But anyway, my camera car driver had actually been to the unit. He was just putting the information into dispatch, sitting in his car. A nosy neighbor, not even the RO, came out and shot through our Toyota Corolla and barely missed him.
Wow.
So those are the bad days. Those are the days that are not fun and I don't look forward to, and I hope I never have to have. I'll take a boring day filled with spreadsheets over that any day.
Yeah, I bet. Does something like that happen very often? Is there an uptick in this that you're seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are under more duress than ever, especially after COVID and whatnot. And I think it's getting worse. If you follow CU Collector or CU Repossession or repo.buzz, they post these instances of violence. I mean, it's literally almost every day. It's not every day that someone is dying, but it does, or, you know, is gravely injured, but it does happen. Colleague of mine just last year had an agent shot 3 times. And fortunately, he survived, but that's not always the case. And so, and there's a lot of misconception around the things like stand your ground laws and whatnot that have become kind of problematic for us. So in Texas, we have a statute 3233, I believe it is. And that is kind of protects us because you can't hinder a secured creditor, right? Hinder us from securing that collateral. And so, and I think you guys know, being in the dealer space, that a lot of these sales contracts have that in there, right? They have like a repossession clause that explain that, like, yes, we can go into their driveway. And there are laws in most states protecting us in that aspect. But as you can see from my camera car driver being shot at, they never actually arrested and charged that guy who shot at my camera car driver.
Really?
And then we were not able to collect the collateral either in that situation, right? We were told to leave the scene. So obviously, fine, yes, this third party had created a breach of peace, but there was also no justice for us. And it's just so backwards because of these stand your ground laws, and consumers especially misinterpret that they can just shoot anybody. Well, we're identified, you know what I mean? Our cars and trucks, you know why we're there. You know, we're not out, you know, creeping around your house in a ski mask. My 4,500 diesel trucks are loud, and you know,
they know you're pulling up.
If I was going to steal your car, it certainly wouldn't be with that. Well, yeah. I mean, yes and no.
Yeah. Wow. So,
well, you were also touching on the laws. I mean, I would obviously, you know, all the laws and stuff, but I'm sure the average consumer doesn't know the laws. You know, they don't,
right.
You know, they may understand the blanket of stand your ground laws, but they probably are not familiar with, except for.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's it. It's just that the law is misinterpreted. Like I said, it's just, oh, I can shoot at anybody that's on my property. Well, that's not actually true.
Well, you're mostly doing business in Texas, I assume.
Yeah, I am. We are just in Houston. We cover an area the size of Massachusetts. I'm all set. I don't really think I need another market, but I have friends that are in tons of markets, and I bless them because that just, you know, doubles, triples down on that stress.
Oh, yeah. Having to understand all the different laws within those areas in different states.
Yeah, and every state's a little different, right? And like our state is a licensing state. We have TDLR, but TDLR licenses us. They don't so much govern us as they do tow companies. But like, and California's licensed, Florida's licensed, Chicago's probably one of the, in California and Florida are probably some of the most strict for licensing. But then there's tons of states that just don't have licensing. So it's like the wild, wild west, you know, you get a tow truck and you can do whatever you want.
There's a question that sort of relates to that from Ryan Everson. He's wondering what probably the worst states to do this job are in.
I don't think any lenders refuse to do business in certain states. And I would say, I don't think there's like a best or worst state. I mean, obviously I don't have experience repoing in any other state. I have colleagues that do. I would say it's probably the most expensive in California, Hawaii, you know, but there's different challenges to every state, right? So like Texas is so big. So geography is a challenge for me here because, you know, I'm covering where some people cover one market, you know, it's on a much smaller scale than the greater Houston area, which I told you, it's like the size of Massachusetts, just that greater Houston area. So it's like I am covering a whole state within a state, but it's really just one market. So there's challenges to every state. And then there's some states that, you know, LPR technology is illegal. I don't know how, like.
What is LPR?
So it's license plate recognition. So what it does is it captures plate data and it stamps those plates with like a geocode and, you know, a time and date and a picture. So that historical data not only helps repossessors who use it, but that data is then sold to like Homeland Security. It does help, you know, recover stolen vehicles, helps insurance companies, helps find criminals. So that data is extremely important. And so it would be really hard now that we have invested so much in our LPR program if like we suddenly weren't able to use it. So I think every state just poses its different challenges. I wouldn't say there's a best or worst state.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to repo that. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I'm sure something like that could also be used in you know, a different manner as well.
Well, in your line of business, the worst states would be the ones where everyone pays their bills.
Yeah.
I don't think in any state.
I don't think that exists.
No.
But well, and like like I got buddies that work in Minnesota, for example. I certainly wouldn't want to have to dig a car out of snow to repo it. So I'll deal with my possibility of hurricanes every few years over having to every year go out in 3, 4, 5 feet of snow.
It's harder to shoot someone in the snow, though.
Well, Alex, you started off with a story about, doing sort of your own recovery at the dealership. Bryanna, how many dealerships do you find or do you run into within your area that think that they could take something like this on themselves? And how do you speak to that?
It's not so much just dealerships in my area. I think I really started exploring this issue when Amanda Sanchez had invited me to join like the Buy Here, Pay Here boardroom and success groups on Facebook. And I started realizing, and then when I spoke at NIADA, I started realizing how many dealerships really do their own repos and think that that's okay. And I have a friend actually here in Houston that when he opened up his local dealership, and he told us we were too expensive, but after a few of his own repos, he definitely called us back. So I think it's that, and a lot of dealers are using less than professional. So I think I've used this term with you guys before, right? There's people out there who play repo, and then there's people like us that are professionals, and that this is our livelihood, and we treat it as a business. And it's not, excuse me, it's not, a game or entertainment or a TV show. So I find that a lot of dealerships are lacking the education on why it's important to hire a professional repossessor. And I don't think that's their fault. I think that has just been that culture for so long that it's one of those things. Oh, well, this is kind of how it's always been done. And this guy before me that I mentored me did it this way. And his guy that mentored him did it this way. And so this is why we do it that way. But it's so much different now, especially with all of these state and federal regulations that, again, I would just advise anyone who says that they're doing it themselves to just not do that.
I join you in that sentiment.
And like I said, as a consumer facing business, I wouldn't want to also be its collector. I just, I wouldn't. I would want to maintain my good relationship, my good reputation with my customers, because I don't know if you guys have ever seen any repo company reviews on Google or Yelp, but we don't get a lot of good ones. Nobody's ever like, hey, this was the best repo experience of my entire life. I think I'm going to not pay my bills for another 90 days so that I can meet Bryanna again. No,
everything went so smooth.
Yeah.
So we have some questions from the audience, and Ryan Everson is peppering them. But let's start with Jeff for a minute here, because this is timely. This is a question we were planning to ask anyway. There's a lot of hype in the media right now about repos getting ready to skyrocket or are skyrocketing. And Jeff's asking the same thing. Are you seeing an uptick in these lately?
Yes. But it is tax season, which is not Christmas for us. So we're anxious to see what's going to happen. Of course, all of us owners are reading as much information as possible, right? But there's a lot of conflicting information from economists, from people in the industry, from all these publications like Black Book, whatever, and auto remarketing, and then, just presentations and statements other people in the industry will give. And listen, we have prepared for an uptick, but I'm not holding my breath at this point because, and look, I'm not an economist. I'm not a financial forecaster, but, and after COVID, I know that pretty much anything can happen in this industry, right? And in this world, our world has changed significantly. So yes, we have seen an uptick. A lot of my colleagues are busy. They're posting record numbers. We're going to be patient and see what happens, through tax season. but I know that because of the used car market and everything that has kind of led up to this point, there was a lot of high, and then the Federal Reserve with the high interest rates. So there's been a lot of crazy loans written on cars that people are maybe going to realize, oh my God, I'm paying more for this 5-year-old car than I would for a brand new car. So we are expecting to not, drop in numbers anytime soon. But again, at this point, anything can happen. I mean, China is having another huge surge in COVID. Obviously, our government has been pretty adamant about not having additional shutdowns and things like that. But we were shut down for 160 days by the TOCCC here in Texas during 2020, and that was brutal. So I like to say I'm not going to hold my breath, because the world is so crazy right now. And I don't want to get anybody's hopes up and say, yeah, we're going to be busier than ever. It's going to be great. We're going to be making, money like we were in the 90s, because we just don't truly know. But as for right now, yes, we have seen a huge uptick in recovery activity.
How does tax season persuade that?
That was my question.
So a lot of people promise to pay, right, when they're going to get their tax returns. Lenders want to keep consumers in their vehicles, right? That's the goal.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, aside from the huge surge in used car sales during 2020 because of the chip supply issue and all of that stuff, which is leveling out now, they're not making record profits off of, remarketing their cars at the auction. So they want to keep their consumers in the vehicles. So, and we saw this during COVID too, right? How many deferments were given, how many, special arrangements were made. And so, during tax season, we see basically on a smaller scale, that same thing, lots of promise to pay, lots of customer made a payment, right, but still have something back. And then like in some states like Minnesota, and I think actually in federal case law, the Cobb Act has been mentioned, which is basically like if you accept late payments, then it's kind of considered like, I don't want to say like a recontracting, but that like you're accepting that behavior as your contract, right? And so the consumer can a good consumer rights attorney can kind of spin that as, oh, well, this has been acceptable to you. So lenders have to be very careful because they obviously don't want to get sued as well. So we see this kind of behavior in a smaller scale during tax season, and it does usually impact our numbers negatively.
Interesting.
It makes sense though.
Once again, learned something totally new.
So you mentioned that, people are realizing they're paying more for their car than they probably feel like they should be. So Ryan had a question in that regard. How often are you seeing voluntary repos versus involuntary?
I've been seeing a lot more voluntaries recently than I have. I'd have to actually get into my databases and pull some numbers. And on a general national scale, it would be almost impossible for me to give you an actual, number for that, because there's just so many different lenders and different companies or whatever that operate, and they don't all operate through our main database, which is Recovery Database Network and things like that. But I would say maybe 10%. I mean, and we always say, so this is another thing I'm going to tell you guys, voluntaries aren't always a voluntary. And this is something that we've had to educate on too. People will say they're going to give up the car because they want that little less bad, mark on their credit. But is it a voluntary when I go and pick it up and they've taken all the lug nuts out of the tires?
Yeah. I take it that happens.
So that's the next question then. How often do they sabotage their vehicle? So
often.
Really?
And so we've trained our agents, check the tires. We've had a voluntary that a guy had actually locked a chain to the drive shaft under his garage and like connected it to something in his garage. And if our guys hadn't walked around that vehicle and checked it before just hooking it and dragging it out of the driveway, it would have ripped off his whole garage door, and who knows what was tied to into the garage. So I mean, we have trained our guys. My husband says all too often. We trained our guys. Look, don't ever assume a voluntary is a voluntary. And we don't want to have any contact either for a voluntary. And you know, what's frustrating is some clients do want like the consumer to sign a form or whatever. And in some states that's required. Fortunately in Texas, it's not required, but I don't want to have any contact. Please put your keys in the cup holder and get all of your stuff out and stay far, far away from us, please. That's what we want. And so, you know, you can even have a breach of peace on a voluntary, which has happened, right? Because sometimes consumers feel jilted by their lender or whatever, and they want to argue with someone, and they don't understand that we're a separate entity from their lender. And so they want to take it out on my agent when he gets there to collect the car, right? So we've even had that happen where we've had to leave a voluntary just because the consumer wanted to fight. And so, you know, I don't think that voluntary should really be a term as far as repossessions go. It should just be a repossession because that's what it is. And I should get paid the same fee for it, because often it's not easier or any less dangerous.
I was to say, and
if it's a voluntary, they should just drop it off at the yard for me.
Exactly.
Ideally.
Yeah, I would guess you need to approach each repo exactly the same way.
Yeah, never, ever, ever let your guard down. You know, I have a girlfriend, she doesn't repo anymore, she does transports. And she let her guard down once. It was a little old lady who had rolled down the window. And so she thought, no, this little old lady can't be dangerous. Well, the little old lady rolled up the window with her arm in it because she leaned into the car with like her arm, and then drug her for a mile or so. And she was severely, severely injured. So you just never, ever, ever let your guard down.
Not even the little old lady.
No, not even the little old lady.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe on a different note, how often are y'all involved in exotics, picking up Ferraris or?
That's probably
have you seen an uptick of those?
Especially since the Bitcoins and all have crashed out.
A little bit, yeah. A lot of what we see with exotics is fraud. And so because people want to give that impression that they're wealthy and, you know, Instagram that car and put it on TikTok. And good point, Corey, about vols being about as easy as GPS is. But yeah, my husband is our exotic specialist, and we have seen an uptick in those recently. And
that sounds like a job perk.
I mean, it's not like we get to drive them or enjoy them or anything. They just get to sit in my warehouse until they you know, get remarketed or get delivered back to the client. So you know, and anybody who has any sense shouldn't be, you know, driving them or, you know, kind of posting those repos on TikTok or anything either. But anyway, but yeah, most of the exotic cars that we see are really due to fraud and not really, you know, the loss of wealth.
That makes sense.
Trying to figure out like what type of fraud.
Yeah, so people write bad checks, people misrepresent their finances, they luxury lease these vehicles, you know, ship them out of country, just that kind of thing. So
we'll give Christine a little rewind here.
I like her question. Christine, was it Christine or Christina?
That's Christine.
Christine, it's my husband's fault, and and I don't know. I mean, I certainly didn't decide this. I'll tell you what, I was a vet tech in another life, and I never thought that I would be the repo lady. Actually, we moved to Houston so my husband could go to school for something else. And I guess sometimes this industry, unfortunately, Chris, you're right. We bumped our heads, or were dropped on our heads as children. I don't know. But we moved here for him to do something completely different. But I guess this industry kind of gets in your blood. And if it's okay, I'd actually like to plug something. My friend Kevin Armstrong wrote a book called Repo Blood. It's a short book with a lot of really great information. You guys should read it, because a lot of these people in repo, they're legacy repo people, right? Like they were raised in it. They married into it. Yeah, most of us don't just, and it's crazy. So we say this, like when people get on one of the repo farms and they're like, hey, I think I'm going to open a repo company. We're like, yeah, run, don't. It's expensive. It's dangerous. I mean, it is more expensive now than it's ever been. And we have been fighting for, I'm sure you guys see me all over LinkedIn and my colleagues all over LinkedIn and Facebook and things like that. We've been fighting for fee increases. And this is another thing that Kevin talks about in his book. So if anybody really wants to understand a little bit more about the repo industry, buy that book. It's awesome. And it kind of explains why we're all so crazy. Well, and it's a small industry, right? Like we all kind of are connected.
Yeah, I
and
would
know
think
each
so.
other. We really do. I mean, I always say it's high school with credit cards because like we all know each other to some extent. I think there's like 3,000 to 5,000 repossessors in the entire country. And so if you think about that on a scale of like how many grocery stores and fast food places just in the city you live in, right? So to some extent,
almost 50,000 car dealers. So
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or more than that, that's actually. Now that I think about, there's like 18,000 franchise and 40 independents. Yeah.
Well, and there's a lot of people though that play repo. Don't forget that there is, 3,000 to 5,000 established, legit, accredited repo companies. But there's a lot of people who play repo too.
Yeah.
So there's a comment here from Nick Jenkins, and this was something that when you were saying you wanted to be able to up your fees, I would assume that insurance has crept up.
Yeah, and let's all thank the people. Well, I'm not going to say that some of that isn't obvious. I'm actually kind of green to this industry. I've only been working at our company since 2014. We opened in Houston in 2008, but my husband's been doing this for about 20 years. And like I said, most of the people in the industry have been doing this forever. Their family did it. So insurance is insane. And some of that is our fault for, the wild, wild west cowboy days, opening gates, picking locks, things like that. But also because of these federal regulations and lawsuits and things like that, it's wild. I think we're more insured than some of the lenders we work for or with.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Can't imagine all the different types of insurance you would also need to carry.
We could basically buy a house with our insurance premium every year. It is not, your $5,000, $10,000, even $20,000 insurance policy. It's insanity. And the guy who said that he just started a repo company and saw his insurance repo, it is extremely even hard to get insurance. I think there's only like 3 or 4 carriers in the entire country that provide the correct kind of insurance, which is you're going to want wrongful repo, on hook coverage, garage keepers, et cetera. So, it's not just a towing liability policy. And something I also advise against is make sure you have an actual repo policy by one of those carriers. Progressive is not a repo policy. So that's for people who play repo. And that's an 80-20 policy. And what that means for people who don't know, it means that not more than 20% of your revenue can be generated by repossession activities. So, and it won't cover wrongful repo and the things that you're going to actually need if you end up in one of those situations where you end up in court or, you need it to cover your client.
So the insurance business, from what I understand, and my company works with a few insurers. We do some stuff for them, but that's not public knowledge. But my contacts over there have told me it's been really rough for them the past few years, mainly due to new regulations. And like, for example, there's some pretty well-known insurance companies that really aren't writing new policies in a big way in the state of California. For just people buying cars, for example, just because California has gotten hard to do business in as an insurer. And and on top of that, everybody's having to increase their insurance buys because of cyber crimes and all those payouts and things that have been occurring on that regard. It's just, it's a mess.
Yeah. And that's another thing. We're not required to now have that employee dishonesty policy, that fidelity policy. It used to be called a bond in our industry. It's not, we can't call it that anymore, but we have to have so much additional insurance too, but it's really just that wrongful repo. Mike from Harding Brooks and Renee from Harding Brooks, I think you guys have probably seen them around the social media circuit. And if not, definitely check out their page because they do a lot of education. Yeah, they do a lot of education on the repo side, because that insurance is so difficult to get, to obtain and maintain, and how expensive it is. And they're awesome in our industry. They do a lot of things that they don't have to as an insurance company, as far as participation and education and collaboration. And so they have a lot of great information too out there for anybody, any of these dealers who is looking to have the proper insurance and do their own repos. Or, if you are looking to hire an appropriate repo person, they will educate you on what to look for in the COIs and things like that. So they're a great resource for insurance education.
Well, how about we move away from that boring insurance
yeah, insurance
topic.
is so fun.
Leave that one. It's important for sure. But how about we talk about
what kind of trucks we use. So there are a lot of people who use sneaker trucks. We don't use sneaker trucks. It's not necessarily illegal in Texas, but it's kind of frowned upon. So we use wheel lifts. All of our trucks are Dodge 4500s. We're putting 150, 200,000 miles on them a year and switching them out because we have run such a big area. But I think you'll find most professional repo people, except for like a lot of people in California do use sneaker trucks because they have to get into so many parking garages and things like that. We don't so much have that challenge here in Texas. So we really do just use the standard self-loader wheel lifts.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think like so many things, and like the physical things you have to go through just to get a car out of somewhere is, it's mind boggling. I didn't even think about parking garages and what that could do.
Yeah, I mean, we have some super secured high rise, like, fancy buildings here downtown. There's no getting in there. They have guards. Even if we, cut a key and took a key programmer in there, we'll get trespassed. And we have been, I'm going to say as repo people, because, we want to get that car. We learned in the past, like where we can go and where we can't go, because, there's just certain areas. Well, and I don't ever want to have my company have one of my employees get, charges for trespassing either. That's not worth it to me. That car is not worth it to me. So,
what do you do in that situation? Do you just go back to the lender and say, we can't get this, or?
Yeah. And, we do skip tracing. We do use LPR or historical technology to see, if we can create a pattern of movement of that vehicle and, try and snag it somewhere where, they have it out. But like I said, consumers are smarter than they've ever been, especially consumers who live in those kinds of places who have access to even more help and education than your average consumer. So they, know how to move around. And consumers from the lowest income bracket to the highest, they all have learned how to move around without, giving us time to be able to get that vehicle. So some are just lost, and that's really where the lender has to go legal. And I know it's expensive, and I know it sucks, and I hate to see a car go, because it's personal for us too, right? Like I don't get paid. We get paid on contingently. I don't get paid if I don't pick up that vehicle, unless and then I've wasted hours. It's cost me money, right? If I don't pick it up.
For sure.
So we want to pick it up, trust me, but we're also going to do it the right way. We're not going to walk the line or cross the line of doing illegal activities. We just aren't, because it's not worth it. It's way more expensive than just letting that car go and moving on to the next one.
Well, that touches on something I want, because you mentioned it earlier. What other type of new technologies that, maybe come about in the past couple of years that have made this more efficient for you guys?
So we, ClearPlan and ClearData have been awesome for us. It's a mapping program that helps us identify all of our accounts in the area and put different icons on the addresses so that, we can identify if we've checked into that account, if we've spotted that account, if it's a bad address. It helps relay information so much faster. So my husband was repoing out in the days of like key maps and things like that, and like phone books, No, I absolutely not. I am spoiled.
You're really letting his age go here.
I am spoiled. Well, I've just been doing it so much less longer than him. I bet he could tell you guys some really fun stories, though. So you should have him on sometime because
Sure.
I don't like to tell war stories because I don't like. But he could probably tell you some from back in the day that are great. But we're kind of spoiled now, and you know what's funny? I see a lot of people online say like, "Oh, they're not even real repossessors anymore, and you just rely on this and that." Everybody relies on technology. Welcome to this century. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
of course I'm going to work smarter and not harder. So just technology in general has made our job, I like to say, and I did get this from a girlfriend, that we're actually like a data collection, logistics company that has the ability to do repossession. So that's a fun thing I like to say at parties now instead of I'm a repo lady. Because when you tell people you're a repo lady, you know what the first thing they say is that first comment that came up on this show. Oh, is it like the TV shows, Lizard Lick? I'm like, no, it's everything that isn't. So everything they do is nothing that we do. And that's fake anyway, just so you guys know. It's totally set up. You could never work for actual banks and act like that. Those guys aren't allowed at like our industry events and things like that. They're a complete embarrassment. And they're probably why our insurance is so expensive. So thanks, Lizard Lick.
Oh.
I'm
not
there
familiar
isn't
with
a
Lizard
thing on
Lick.
TV that you
is
can
that
believe.
A show?
Yes, but don't go watch it.
I won't. I mean, there's a couple, I think there's one or two that I ran across by accident that were like YouTube channels. There's this one that's this gentleman that's a repo, and I mean, it's pretty entertaining to say the least, but I'm surprised, they film all this, and some of it gets crazy.
So this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. Yeah. It's unprofessional. First of all of that is, this isn't a lifestyle hook and book. Like, you're not cool. Stop it. Two, like, this is a profession and you're making a mockery of it. And three, you're making a mockery of the consumer, right? Some of these people are going through the hardest time in their life. And it is not cool or funny to put that, them chasing you or arguing with you or whatever, or driving their truck off of the lift or whatever.
Yeah.
It's unprofessional, and you look like an idiot. So you should probably just, like, don't do it. None of us are impressed. And I don't know even how they're doing repos. I mean, if I was a lender and I found out that people were posting those kinds of videos, I would fire that agent.
Huh. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the channel, but that was a bulk of his business was some type of repo, usually vehicle repo or, boats.
I've seen a few of them.
I only remember the Airplane Repo one. I never watched any of the others. But
I've kind of campaigned against this in our industry. People will send me these videos, and I'll track them down. I mean, I find people for a living. So if they blur out their plates or whatever.
Yeah, it's easy for you.
And I will,
do not piss Bryanna off.
And I don't send it to the insurance companies or the clients, but I send it to the owners of the companies and have a conversation with them and let them know, hey, this is how your employee is representing you in the field. Unfortunately, some of these guys are just out there playing repo and they have no one to answer to, and they're never going to take down those videos, and they're getting paid for likes and things like that. But you know what? I really hope they're saving that money, because eventually they're going to get sued.
I can see that happening.
Yeah. Well, we've got another change of direction and question here.
Okay.
So it sounds like Nick Jenkins has started his own repo business, and he's got some questions about how you hire for it.
I think Nick wrote me on LinkedIn too, if I'm not mistaken. But let's see. Do you do massive retraining? Nick, I'm going to tell you what. I don't hire other people's garbage anymore. I don't recycle
That's his follow-up
employees.
question. Yeah.
Yep. I don't recycle employees anymore. I mean, there are exceptions. I'm not going to lie. I mean, if I have had because we've been in Houston so long, there are agents that I've met through networking or whatever that I have a good relationship with, that I know their reputation, and I have hired a few experienced agents. But my husband and I prefer to hire, thanks, Christine. I appreciate you. Do prefer to hire, look, give me the Amazon drivers, give me the FedEx drivers. I don't hire tow jockeys because they drive like animals. And so give me somebody who has some kind of mechanical experience, who has driven a forklift or a tractor or something like that, and let me train you, because and I will spend I don't so much train the agents except for on the laws and regulations and the processes side. My husband's more so out there training them in the field, but let us train you and take the time and invest the time, and that's how you build the best agents. Because if a guy or a girl comes and applies for you and they've worked for every company in the city, there's a reason that they don't have a job.
Yeah.
So we like to say,
they can
don't
come
put
sell
an ass
cars.
yeah, we like to say, don't just put an ass in the seat. You want a member of your team.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah.
There's a book out there called Good to Great, and that's the one main thing that they discovered when they were looking at successful companies is they were dedicated to finding the right person at the right time for the right job all the time.
Yeah. And I've hired people that I've moved into other positions because they ended up not being successful in the position they were in. But now they're super successful in this new position, right? I have one girl, I think I've moved her around like 4 times. There was tears. But now she's in a position that she loves and she is so successful in. And she looks forward to coming to work every day. And that is the culture that we pride ourselves on.
That's great.
That's awesome. Thanks, Chris. Y'all are making me blush over here.
You got a fan club.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, man, we've had some great questions come through. I'm actually going back to our questions we were coming up with.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
most people covered them.
Yeah. Well, do you know, payment history of any of the people you're taking the car from? So you don't know whether they've been driving that car for years or if they just bought it 3 months ago.
This is
Would that information make a difference?
I'd prefer not to know it, really. I just want to know that you're past due and this vehicle is out for repossession, but this is a struggle with consumers, right? Because we do deal with consumers post repo a lot because they want to get their personal property or they're going to redeem their car and they're angry often, right? That nobody's ever like, hey, like I said, best repo experience ever. Can't wait to meet you guys. So they're frustrated and like I said before, they don't understand that we're a separate entity from their lender, or they don't understand that we don't share all of the information that their lender has, right? So I don't know that your mom had leukemia or your husband passed away or, that you lost your job or that you yourself were sick and that, you tried to make payment arrangements for 6 months or, that any of that stuff. All I know is that you're past due and that I have been issued a repossession order. I don't know any of the backstory on that. And so I think I prefer to keep it that way because how would the information change what I do, right?
Yeah, I would think it would, if anything, it would probably work against you.
Yeah. Because I know people.
You would conceptualize maybe what that person is, who they are, and how they're going to react. And it could end up being the exact opposite. So
right, and I have to be able to
fresh eyes for each one.
I have to be able to compartmentalize, right? Because at the end of the day, I am human. I don't want to see other humans suffer. I have empathy. I'm not some sociopath that loves to steal other people's stuff, right? I don't want to say it's a dirty job, but somebody has to do it, right? And so I have to be able to compartmentalize my human self and then my business self. So I don't think it would be helpful for me to know, all of these consumers' backstories. And also then I'd have to just hire someone to read all of that stuff every day and relay that information because we have so many open orders.
Yeah, I was just curious from a data perspective, but it does make sense that you shouldn't know that.
Yeah. Ryan, you're not wrong. And that's why I always say that the consumer thinks that we're the same entity or, affiliated with their lender and we're not, a third party contractor. A lot of consumers believe that. Because they'll be like, well, GM or Ford or whoever it was said that you guys are going to do this. And I'm like, and I have to constantly explain, well, I'm sorry, like this is our process. We are a separate entity. So they just didn't know like for making appointments, for example. And so, you know, because some collector will tell the consumer, oh, well, you can just go there and pick up your property. Well, no, you have to make an appointment and all that stuff. So we are constantly explaining, like, we're a separate company.
I'm curious.
By the way, we've got
just have
Jeff. Hold on one second. There was a comment from Corey that definitely has to be put out there. Like he was saying that you all have had some big hearts from time to time and helped some customers out.
Oh wow.
Yes. Listen, not all of these people who don't pay their bills are, you know, scumbags or bad people. And that's another reason why I fully believe we don't videotape them and make a mockery of them. There has been a few people in the past, yes, that my husband and I have helped. I don't like to, you know, advertise that. But, you know, there has been some people that we've talked to that have come in and, you know, their story was heartbreaking and, you know, they were kind to us too. That's a big difference, right? When you're not calling me every expletive in the entire world and screaming at me and blaming me for all your problems. And you just kind of have a conversation with me about, you know, whatever's going on with you. Like I said, we're human at the end of the day. And yes, so, but don't get any ideas, any consumers listening to this podcast, okay? Because I'm not.
You don't have to worry about that.
That's very kind. The ones who are deserving aren't the ones who are researching how to avoid you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Sorry, Jeff. Yeah. I had to cut you off because that was a big one.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We had one lady who she always sticks out to me. Her husband had passed away, and she said, you know, the truck was the last thing she had of him. And, and she had lost everything else and the balance wasn't very high and she was giving it up as a voluntary. And so we paid that truck off for her.
Wow. That's kind.
Very.
Well, maybe that gives my karma for all the times I didn't.
There you go.
It's the balance of the scales, guys. Because according to some people, we are the world's worst. And there's nothing I could do or say to change that opinion.
No, that's just something you have to live with if you're going to be in that industry. What's the most, I'm just curious, and maybe you just know it for your area, which of course could change geographically. And maybe you see stats. I'm guessing you probably see stats across the United States. I'm just curious, what is the most repoed vehicle?
Oh gosh, I don't actually have any stats for that, to be completely honest with you. But if I can give it to you off the top of my head, just from what I see in my yard, Chevy Malibus, F-150s, Altimas, Maximas.
The most popular cars.
Yeah, Corollas. Yeah, the most consumer-driven cars. I mean, that's just, common sense there.
I figured that was the answer. Thought maybe
I said Chevy Malibu, Corey.
Yeah, I was going to say both of you are hitting on that one. That must be it.
We should have just had him on the show with me.
The Malibu.
Well, yeah, it'd be great to have Corey on in the future.
Babe, you would be so fun. He's a fun guy. Yeah, Chris, our buddy, he works up in Michigan. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like you said, small family.
So if Chris is up in Michigan, I think Ryan Everson's up that way too, the Garber Automotive Group. So
yeah. Hey, and if any of you, the dealers that are listening, we have a really great network of professional repossessors. The ARA, the American Recovery Association, has a member directory on their website. Texas has a member directory on our website. California, I think there's like 12 functioning state associations right now, and we're working on like 18. And if anybody is looking for a professional repossessor, even if you don't know where to start, shoot me a message. I'll point you in the right direction, because it's not really just about like helping out my colleagues or my friends or my network. I would like to see people protecting their businesses too and doing things the right way. And all we can do is help each other and educate each other and bridge this gap between our sectors of the industry. And I'm all about that.
Well, we definitely appreciate it. That's great. And well, I guess there's different websites they can reach out to. And how would they go about reaching you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. I am the president of Texas ARP, so you can reach out to me there. I can shoot you guys my email and stuff if you want to post it after, because I think if I rattle it off, everybody will probably just forget it. But LinkedIn and Facebook are I'm all over the place there. It's very easy.
We'll link
to
out to your LinkedIn page. That's easy enough.
Perfect.
And also, just to reiterate, NIADA loves you. So
I had such a good time. I was so nervous because I had never gone to an event outside of like the repo space and spoke there, and I was so happy to be so well received. But I think it was so funny. Everybody was calling me the repo lady by the time I left. But I had a blast, and I got to meet so many really cool people, and I thought my presentation went really well, and I hope that it helped these dealers understand that the importance of what we do and why to hire a professional. And yeah, I had a blast, and I hope that they'll invite us back.
That's awesome.
And I hope that the other states like FIATA and all that will hook up with the state associations there and meet some of my colleagues, because really we've taken this turn. We want to, get involved in these other spaces that we have never had any interaction with before. And we want to educate, and we want to connect, and we want people, like I said, to understand that we're professionals also doing a business, and, we can all kind of help each other.
Look, it's fascinating talking to you.
I know.
There's so many things that I think dealers especially, they just sell the car and don't think about all the aspects of what happens afterward, aside from the servicing of it. But
post repo is crazy. So, there's just so much to it, right? Like the personal property, and there's so many different laws in every state regarding personal property, and just like the redemption process, and then the remarketing auction process. So sometimes getting the car is easier than dealing with the post repo process.
Can only imagine.
Imagine what some of those things come back like.
Yeah, that's you guys aren't like, so we have 2 full-size shipping containers at our yard that we built shelves into and put air conditioning and cameras into and everything, and then we have a huge, like, I don't know, Corey, it's 10,000 square foot warehouse, giant warehouse. It's full of other people's crap.
Wow.
We even had
you mean like the stuff that came out of their cars?
Came out of the vehicles?
Yeah. So in Texas, we have to send a personal property notification, right? And then from the day we send that personal property notification, we have to store that personal property for 31 days. Some clients require us to store it even longer. So now, instead of having to go through everything every 31 days, we just store everything for 60 days so that we can rotate it in a more organized manner, right? And then it gives those consumers time to come get their stuff, but often they don't. And some of these cars are filled to the brim. And you know what, you guys, I got to tell you this. We have, we don't anymore because we finally took them to a cemetery. We had 2 urns that somebody never came and got, like grandma and grandpa, they just never came and got them.
I was going to ask about firearms and drugs.
Yeah, like Corey says that, and we say this to clients too. And I always tell people, hey, look, you want to see the life in the day of a repo? Come out to our yard. I'm happy. You can come hang out with me. There's a great hotel right by inside IH Airport. There's a Marriott. It's a great hotel. You can fly right in, walk over the Sky Bridge, check into your hotel. Our corporate lot's about 10 minutes away, not even, from IAH. And I always invite, and Corey invites everyone to come and spend a day with us and see what it's really like in the life of a repo day. I got a waiver you can sign if you want to go out in a truck with one of the agents, but I don't think people really understand how much there is to it until they experience it. I bet. Man. Yeah, and I'll let you clean out one of the nastiest cars, but you got to wear gloves. We keep Narcan at the lot because
I bet.
Our agents are gonna end up touching a fentanyl. So
God,
Fortunately, we haven't seen that as much as we just see really gross stuff like roaches and bed bugs and litters of kittens. And, I got a buddy that told me a story once that someone put a cooler full of rattlesnakes in the repo for them. So I'm sure that was intentional. That is probably the least fun part of, not that anybody's job is super fun, but I love what I do. But the personal property aspect of recovery it's just terrible.
Yeah, my imagination is going to some bad places with this now.
I'll let Corey tell you guys war stories when he's on.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do a Corey story show.
Didn't you guys do one with Pat too? Pat Altez, it was somebody else that did one with Pat Altez. I'll have to go back. That was a great show too. But Pat Altez and I do Repo America. So that's a good educational podcast too for any dealers out there who want to learn more about this side of the industry. And we have insurance people and stuff on there. I'm the co-host sometimes. So.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Repo America. I'll check it out.
Yeah. We'll probably be sharing this episode with some insurance people and whatnot too.
Yeah, I think Pat wanted me to ask you guys if we could share it there. So
absolutely.
Absolutely.
That would be great.
Yep, we'll send you a link with all the information.
Yep.
Well, I know you guys only scheduled me an hour. I don't want to monopolize your day.
It's fascinating. So
I can still talk. I'm home today. I'm not feeling well. I'm just gonna run over. My girlfriend's gonna do a quick visit with me. After, good to have a doctor friend. Gonna do a visit with me. Just check on me after this. So.
No,
it's Friday, and one of the best things for sickness on a Friday is a hot toddy, is what my doctor told me. So
you ain't lying. It's just a little sinus infection. I'm not like dying over here or anything.
Yeah, any reason to have a hot toddy is a good one.
Yeah, better have a hot toddy before the antibiotics, right?
For sure.
So what else? You guys have any other questions for me? Is there anything else I could shed some light on?
I'm even thinking I might take you up on that offer. There's going to be so many of us who are coming down to Dallas in 2 weeks. NIADA is there. So
that's right.
I know. I wish I was going. I just, I really need to focus on work in Q1 here and building Texas ARP. We're really trying to build our membership and things like that. So I kind of have to stay focused.
Understood.
Makes sense.
And the first time you said Texas ARP, I was like, no, she did say AARP. But,
it's a Texas accredited repossession professionals.
Okay.
And so in Texas, you have to have a TDLR. You have to have a sales tax and use certificate because we're considered collectors. So, and then you have to have a franchise certificate if you make a certain amount of revenue. And obviously you want to have the correct insurance policy, but the state doesn't really so much enforce that. But that's why we call ourselves the accredited. And so those are things we look for when we're vetting our members.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, it sounds like we need to let you get back to hot toddy time. And
well, I really enjoyed this, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. And I'm so excited that the dealer space has kind of embraced me. And I really hope that you guys get to know some more of my colleagues as our relationship progresses. Because I like I said, I think we could really help each other.
Well, sure. It's totally mutual. And one of the fun things about the show, because it's recorded, most of the views come next week. So there could be some residual questions that come up for you. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to answer it. Or, maybe we can have you guys on Repo America, or we can do this again in the future.
All right.
Definitely.
Sounds like fun.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. It was a blast. I'll talk to you soon. And Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah,
you as
better,
well.
Bryanna.
All right. Take care.
You guys want me to hang up or stay on?
Oh, I'm hanging up now.
Oh, okay.